budgets that are due to the governor in August, I think. And higher ed has a similar timeline for higher education before they go through the governor and into the legislature. So that's kind of the reason that we have a bunch of these financial items on here today. So the first one, which is number 3 on the agenda, in your attachments that came out with your agenda, as well as on the appointment on the calendar, we've got an outline there just to take you back a little bit, memory refresher for some of you. Last year, one of the recommendations that this council made to the Board of Higher Ed and to the Department of Corrections was to move the funding that has been under contract between corrections and the technical education institutions, move that funding directly to the institutions so we can save the hassle and third party of going through contracts. So we took a little step back on that as we went to have conversations about how to implement it. We wanted to make sure that we were thorough on understanding the impact of what that kind of move would be and how it would be carried out. And so we convened a work group to study this through and answer some questions. And answer the questions is maybe the main question is what it would take to do this worth what it would take to do it? What are the benefits? Are the benefits sufficient to do that? As well as what are the challenges of making that happen? So we spent some time, first of all, with our institutions, and we particularly appreciate Davis Tech, who has probably the biggest part of the technical education contract, providing the education in the Salt Lake facility. So I appreciate their insights. We've also had some conversations with Salt Lake Community College because they've had some experience with Pell and financial aid and another funding model where it's actually coming to the institution. We've spoken with a few people in corrections, and what you have in your attachment number 3 in there is just a summary of some of the issues that we looked at in this work group and some of the conclusions that we came to. So I'm just going to walk you through it, see if you have any questions, comments, and then we'll see if this is something that you as a council want to agree to and send forward. You'll find as we go through this that it's not necessarily, if we go with what's recommended by the work group here, it's not necessarily going to require legislative or direct budgetary action, but it will more address the process of how, if additional funding is needed, how you go about that. So first of all, the recommendation is to continue the prison technical education funding through corrections, as we have been doing before, rather than moving to the institutions. And as we had conversation with the commissioner and the finance team there and some of the other folks that we've been working with on this, including Davis Tech, we've concluded that while there were some benefits that we were looking at moving the funding from the contracts over to an appropriation to the institutions, there are some challenges to that we think we would be better off keeping those with the corrections. So just summarized in your paragraph in there, moving it would reduce corrections flexibility. I think corrections were concerned about that as we were going into the telephone surcharge and your programming budget. Also with higher education's focus being on performance metrics with the traditional institutions, the traditional higher education, not that we're not concerned about those in the correction setting. We are concerned about access and completion and so on, but it seemed that we might get better attention to that. It might be better if it was owned by corrections as part of the reentry programs, reducing recidivism and targeting for that. So keeping the funding in corrections budget would identify your prison technical education with the reentry program and associate funding requests more with reducing recidivism. So with that, any questions or comments on that particular?
Yeah, jump in. Are there questions or comments? And you want to have some type of vote from our group just to accept this
Yeah,
recommendation?
if we want
If
to.
we're comfortable and make sure. And obviously this recommendation, you've worked on it with your work group through USHE. That makes sense. Are there questions or comments? You guys are a quiet bunch today. I'd start telling jokes, but I don't have anything that's funny to say. So, okay, anything else to add?
No, I know that the institutions are probably the most impacted by this. So we have the president of UB Tech here. Davis Tech has had to be excused today for some reasons. But we have had some significant conversations. They were some of the biggest proponents of it to begin with. But as we began to look at some of these issues, we felt like it's probably better advice to keep them under contract with corrections.
Yeah, I agree. And budgets are always a tricky one. So let's take a motion if we're comfortable that we just adopt this as our recommendation.
I can make the motion as.
Go ahead and make the motion.
Video on that. So I move that we adopt this item 1 and the recommendations as the council position.
Okay, let's take a second to that. Anybody second it? Okay, so now any discussion to the motion? Okay, I'm gonna go back to you, maker of the motion.
No, I think we're in good shape. I'm seeing Eric Hutchins out there and I know he has a lot of thoughts on this kind of thing. Anything that you would like to add?
No, I'll just, I think first start off by simply saying that the conversation and the discussion has been excellent. So thank you all for bringing the ideas, the concerns. And I will just simply share that we know that this is critically important to the mission of corrections. And so finding the right answers is absolutely vital. And so hopefully you have felt our support that way in looking for and trying to identify ways that we can just keep this moving forward and to make it really work well for you all. So I know that we don't have all of those things sorted out, but I just wanted to say that the process to this point that I've been involved with has been really good in open debate and lots of ideas and lots of sharing of recommendations and concerns. So thank you for that. And will we go into, I know there's also some conversations about collections and things like that. And so if later in the agenda, we're going to address that, I have some thoughts and some updates for you on that as well.
That'll be done a little further down.
Let me,
so.
yeah, Eric, I'm gonna put that on the agenda to make sure, I'm gonna put it
It's right
right
here
there.
on number 4 or 5 on
Okay,
the.
all right, we'll come back to you on that. And Eric, I can see you're in the Senate building right now. I appreciate the good work. I think corrections is doing a terrific job. You guys are represented well on Capitol Hill. I feel like we've got a really good team that is up there today. It's good seeing you up there this morning. Any other comments before we adopt this recommendation? Anybody here? You guys are awfully quiet today, so.
I was probably out of order on summation, bringing him in.
You were definitely out of order, but I'm not gonna call you out of order. It's okay. I mean, the fact that I've got somebody to say something right now is good. So I'm gonna take that. Let's take that as a vote. This is just gonna be our recommendation as we continue to move forward, keep that budget with corrections. So all those in favor, say aye. Aye. Anybody opposed? I'll rule that recommendation passes unanimously. So let's do that and good work to that group. Structural technology, let's go to.
Well, we gotta do the rest of the recommendations on there, which I think we can do as a group. But some of the other things that we addressed in the funding structure was with it being set up this way, if you're gonna seek new funding for technical education, you'd go to corrections. Corrections would make requests of the legislature if that's where it needed to be, or find some more funding out of budgets or foundations, so on. Just a little piece on return on investment as you go to talk about how do you pay for this and why do we do it? The rough figures are that it's costing about $52,000 a year per inmate on average to keep them incarcerated. And so with some of the research that has been done in this field across the country, we see that recidivism is reduced with technical education. And so if you figure that some of these students are not going to come back that otherwise would have come back, well, you pay for the whole program with what was it, 24 students who go out and get work and don't come back. There's actually more than that would go out and not come back because that's your regular rate, but an additional 24. So we wanted to talk a little bit about the funding that corrections uses. I know this has come up a lot, so we thought it'd be good just to get it out in front of us. Number four, funding from alternative sources. You see a little chart on there. This comes from the legislative fiscal analyst. We see that for this coming year, FY25, the legislature has budgeted 2.2 million for reentry and rehabilitation for post-secondary education, 2 corrections. 1.8 million of that comes from the telephone surcharge account. And I understand I'm a little bit fuzzy on some of the edges on this, but my understanding is that 1.8 million, well, let's come back to that later because that's appropriated by the legislature, 1.8 million. And added to that, 332,000 from the general fund, 49 from the tax fund. 20,000 is estimated for this coming year in dedicated credits, which I understand is largely going to be students who actually pay for some of their tuition on that. So when you total that up, it actually comes about $200,000 shy of the total contracts that the institutions have reported that you have there. So I suppose that's probably because your estimates are conservative on your dedicated credits and you're anticipating coming up with additional funding with that. Any questions or comments on that, Eric or Brian? Did I get that right? So I know this question comes up a lot is how is this funded? How is it being paid for? And we just wanted to have a good idea in front of us.
What is the prison telephone surcharge account? How much is in that?
That's number 5. So let's look at that. So what happens is inmates make phone calls. They get charged for those. See in there, they're charged 10 cents a minute. They get one 15-minute phone call per week, everybody for free. So an additional 10 cents per minute beyond that. And that goes into this telephone surcharge fund. And last year, I think the revenue that we see on the last FY23 on the sheet here. FY23 revenue was a little bit over 1.8 million. And that added to that was interest on the account money that goes into that fund. It also is supposed to include whatever inmates are paying during the year for their education. Supposedly when they start a program, when they enroll, they pay $1 something per hour tuition. And that goes into the fund. And if they're not able to pay for that, which most of them aren't, from what I understand, they enter a promissory note in which I think within 3 years after release, they're required to begin repaying the cost of their tuition on that promissory note. And that's done by the Office of State Debt Collection. So that all goes into this fund, and the legislature appropriates it every year to corrections. So for FY23, they've appropriated 1.8 million. There's been some question about the fund running out, and we're not seeing that, at least in the fiscal analyst website. It seems to be fairly constant. And if things change, some of the conversation I've had is that, there will be charges. You've got new technology, right? You can make phone or, video calls through the tablets and that sort of thing. And there would be charges for some of that are similar to this. So I don't know if we're close on that, but that's kind of where the telephone surcharge comes. But it's not paying for all the education. Paying for most of it. So if there are gonna be additional, funds required, Eric, I think you have some money in your wallet or something, so.
I mean, and I would say, Jared, this is an easy type of thing to pitch to the legislature. If there are additional funds are required. I think our return is significant in what we're doing. I mean, this is important work. So let's make sure if there is a shortfall. I mean, we find all sorts of things that are not as important as this, from my perspective.
Okay, and then there's a little information on tuition and costs on there. We've talked a little bit about that. We've also looked at financial aid because when we made this recommendation last year, we were supposing that if the technical education institutions could get access to Pell, so the students could get Pell grants, that would help the inmates and thereby also the institutions to fund what they're doing. But as we look closer at that, and with Salt Lake Community College's experience on that, it was looking like we would be doing well to have 25% of the students qualify for financial aid. And for the cost of administering the financial aid, having someone to coach the students through the process of enrolling in it, doing the follow-up, you might do well to break even, or maybe even cost a little bit more than you're going to take in on revenue. So the recommendation that our group made was that let's leave it discretionary for the institution as to whether they will go down the path of financial aid eligibility on the technical education. I understand Snow College has submitted an application to the prison education program and would have access to Pell that way. It probably works for them as part of a larger project there where we're doing the academic degree seeking stuff as well, to try to slide that in there. So that's where we ended up on that. Eric, did we cover what you wanted to talk about on payments?
Yeah, is it okay if I comment back on the telephone surcharge thing real quick?
Your hands up, let's go.
Thank you. So a couple of things. First, I appreciated that you put in there that correlation between people recidivating, going back, and the cost. And so, Mr. Chair, you're absolutely right. The return on investment for this effort is substantial. There's not a whole lot of other things that we could do as a state that could not only improve lives and improve our bottom line as a state, but also save ourselves an awful lot of money in the criminal justice system. So I appreciate that that got highlighted. Secondly, I just wanted to make sure to comment around the telephone surcharge. Obviously, as technology improves and things get added, it is our one avenue for getting funds from people that are in our facilities and support from their families to help them improve, to help them get education. So we are very actively looking at the surcharge generally and trying to find ways to see if we can enhance that. If we were to bring on a tablet system or something, could we do something additionally to bring in some additional revenues into that? We don't have that sorted out yet, but I wanted you to know that we are very actively and very aggressively diving into that surcharge concept and seeing how we might use that to help maybe be able to provide some future supplemental funding. We use it now strictly for education purposes. And so it's dedicated to that. And again, as new items come on board, new technology, new ways of delivering like sex offender treatment, substance use treatment, things like that on technology and tablets, we're hoping that we can get some additional supports that will enhance that fund And as we do find creative ways to do that, we'd love to come back and talk to you about that. And Mr. Chair, at some point that may require a slight modification to statute to allow us so that it's not just a telephone surcharge, but it's more appropriately designated, maybe as a technology surcharge or something like that, and a programming surcharge that allows us to do those enhancements that we're hoping to sort out. Thanks.
And Eric, I think that's helpful, and I think the sooner, we do need to tweak the statute, let's tweak it sooner than later. Obviously, this technology is a moving animal. What would be a perfect budget? I mean, what would we need to fill the gap with your $2 million-ish? What is our shortfall like?
Right now, we're doing 2.4 million in technical education that's being paid by corrections to the institutions. That's just to maintain what you have right now, from what I understand. So 2.4 million on that. And another question that comes up for me is that we sometimes have people who are advocating in this area bring up is a telephone surcharge or the ability to communicate with family and others the best or most appropriate way to fund education, or should that come from some other source? And I don't know if corrections is starting to have a position on that, but
Invoice for you now that it's the one that we do have some control over. It's the one way that we do have to help people put skin in the game. And you all know that students tend to do better when they have a little skin in the game themselves. And so I believe there's tremendous benefit that way. But again, to that comment specifically, and Mr. Chair, we are open to other avenues as well, just simply because we recognize the tremendous positive impact that this effort has on our entire system in corrections.
I mean, I guess the ongoing question for me is how many more people could we help? Jump in.
I know our guests today, specifically from Uinta Basin Technical College and Jay Olson from Snow College, are specifically here to put forward some proposals for program expansion, which obviously would include the need for additional funding. So I believe that's included in kind of what they'll submit today. Currently, Snow College, as you mentioned, expanding in Gunnison as well. You know, they're opening their associate degree program. I'm kind of building the stage for there's a lot of potential for growth. There's already a shortfall in the programs, but then a lot of potential for growth just from the report we submitted to the Education Appropriations Subcommittee recently. Eric and myself, we could easily double the enrollment, which on any given day, we have about 600 students enrolled between our technical education, between our associate degree program, between our county jail partners. We've done some reviews of possible program expansions, and there's room to double it. That's adding new programs, that's adding seats to additional programs. So really taking the existing budget, doubling it. I mean, I'm just throwing numbers out here. These aren't any official, this is napkin math.
Yeah.
But, you know, the 2.5, 3 million would allow us to be able to expand and add these programs. Maria, Eric, anything you'd want to add to that?
No,
Mr.
thanks.
Oh,
Oh, sorry,
Maria,
thanks, Brian. I think you said that perfectly. I mean, there is obviously with every person's assessment, we do know we have a huge need for education and employment in that specific risk domain. So we will always have opportunity and people who need this as part of their case action planning. And I think you hit it right on the head, Brian. We'll work with our partners to see what their need is and how we can help support.
All right, Jared, I'm gonna go back to you.
yeah, if a motion's in order, Chair, I would move that the council make recommendations number 2 through 8, part of their recommendations with respect to how do we structure and approach funding,
Okay, and that's
not
probably,
necessarily the amount.
no, and that's appropriate for us. I'm glad we took number one separate, because that was kind of a big
Yeah, kind of a drag.
item, but let's take that. Is there discussion to that? I guess let's take a second to follow Robert's rules. I have Brian with a second. That's what the minutes are gonna reflect. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Brian.
I made eye contact.
You made eye contact. Is there discussion to adopting those recommendations as we continue moving forward? Okay, seeing none, Jared waves summation. All those in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? So that passes. Let's adopt that recommendation. I think that's helpful. Let's jump into the next item. I was getting ahead of myself for sure.
We do have a quorum, right? I think we do, so.
Yeah. Okay, so let's go to Chris Bradbury, instructional technology.
Sure. So after talking to all of the institutions, we were able to get a rough approximation of their technology needs costs as requested at the last AGCC meeting. I provided a instructional technology recommendations based off of the communication I had with all of the varying institutions. I'll just briefly go over each of them. SLCC currently has 300 students during the non-summer semesters. The college has already purchased 200 secure book laptops for student use and is therefore short of approximately 100 laptops based on all student needs. Based off of the need for 100 secure book laptops and the current price from Justice Tech Solutions, who makes the laptops that the Department of Corrections would prefer institutions use, that cost would be $85,900. Snow College has just recently started a collaborative project of starting its prison education program at the Central Utah Correctional Facility in Gunnison. 19 students are currently enrolled in classes and 21 more are expected to join the cohort in fall 2024. As was mentioned earlier today, Snow College did begin the application process to become an official PEP, but they do not currently have JTS, Justice Tech Solutions laptops for student use. Based off of their estimating they will need 50 secure book laptops, and the cost of that would be $42,950. Uinta Basin Technical College has a residential construction program housed at the Duchesne County Jail. And according to them, they have never had the equipment really necessary to do full instruction on theory with only one computer capable of running CAD software. And staff would also like to have students have access to laptops to provide better education opportunities for them. They also expressed the need for a new professional projector, as theirs is no longer reliable. Based off of their needs, this is what they told me: 15 secure book laptops, the cost of which would be $12,885. They requested 3 precision workstations. I looked those up on Dell on their behalf. I found a good estimate for those of $6,147. And then for an Epson Pro EX11000 projector, it was $1,300 for a total of $20,332. The University of Utah has just started their Bachelor of University Studies degree and is almost complete with creating a 2+2 with SLCC to allow students from SLCC with their AS Humanities degree continue on with their Bachelor of University Studies degree, which will allow students to have their credits articulate directly over into the University of Utah's program. But as that starts to take off, they are anticipating more students coming into their program and needing more technology, specifically Justice Tech Solutions laptops for student use. As well as they will need some of the administrative side of things for those machines, which include the docking stations. Their needs are 40 secure book laptops, 2 docking stations for a grand total of $24,258. Other recommendations that the committee discussed and found included that every single institution, including the Skyview Academy, have requested students to have access to Canvas. Based on security concerns, it is recommended to have this service provided by the Utah Department of Corrections, which will mean there will be an as yet unknown cost associated with that. Based on discussions with the Utah Department of Corrections, the sharing of technology resources such as laptops owned by different institutions is not recommended due to security concerns, differing student needs, responsibility of technology replacement, software compatibility concerns, and institutional management concerns. One technology resource that could potentially be shared without much concern are the Rachel servers, which SLCC is currently deploying with the Utah Department of Corrections, which as of right now will include offline versions of Wikipedia that has been vetted for use inside prisons, as well as the Gutenberg Library, with both resources being available in English and Spanish, as well as a type of application, if you will, that allows faculty to, or allows students to turn in from their laptops their homework assignments, which then can be downloaded by faculty onto faculty machines. So that could help reduce paper waste and everything in the system as well. But those Rachel servers could be a potential area where resources could be shared between institutions, since they are essentially just offline intranet hubs. That's everything.
Questions for Chris? We wanted to have a discussion. This is in the notes of how we do this with funding. One of the things Jared has in here is just that we kind of vote, make a recommendation to have corrections and USHE potentially ask for this in the governor's budget. So our recommendation, Eric, just so you're hearing this, potentially would be to have corrections ask for this in the building block with the governor's budget. It could go through corrections, and it also could go through USHE. But I will say to Eric as well as Jared, the process of the legislature, obviously the legislature sets the budget in the end. We get to appropriate. Typically a budget item like this, for Eric to ask for this as it comes up through corrections, it's got to go through the process with the governor's office, and that's Sophia, that's the governor, that's lieutenant governor, and they work really hard. But that process, we don't like to do it. We don't like to bypass that. But this is one of those items that I could personally run an RFA, request for appropriation through the legislature if it didn't show up in those building blocks. This is just so Eric and Jared know, this is one that I'd be happy to run an RFA for. I think this is important, but for purposes of this discussion, the process for state agencies is to run it through the governor's budget and through USHE. Is there anything you would add to that? Because I think we ought to vote to do that, but no, I think this is important enough that we ought to at least take a couple stabs at it to try to get this funded.
It might be useful to clarify, are some of these associated with some of these other budget proposals that are coming up, or is this part of the general infrastructure? Chris, is it your sense that so for example, Salt Lake Community College, 85,000 for 100 secure books. That's to support the population you already have. This is not adding new programs, right? Whereas on Uinta Basin, that's also existing, isn't it? That's not correct, just the ones you're going to propose here. So would it make sense for those to all go up through corrections, or would the technical education go through corrections, since we're doing those under contract? And the degrees granting education would go through the institution on Tim Sheehan's budget request, right?
I think that's a question best answered by Tim Sheehan.
I think I know what he's gonna say.
I don't know if we are gonna know what he says. It looks like he's hiding on purpose.
Hiding.
So he probably stepped out. But
Could be.
tell me.
Yeah, sorry, can you
Yeah, we can hear you, Tim.
hear me? Sorry. I'm rehabbing a knee, so I didn't want to bother you with looking at rehab on a new knee. So sorry about that. On the request, again, I think we'd be great either way if there would be support for it. As you know, on the RFA front, we're kind of limited in how many we could do, but we'd be happy to push it forward that way, or if it goes through corrections. I think Either way, I think we're just strapped. I mean, I think we've had some budget wise, it's not a huge ask, but at the same time, we have put a fair amount of college resources in already. So any support we might be able to get for the technology really would be appreciated, however we might go about doing it. So
technology could be an RFA, just
Right, so.
one RFA to.
So let's just
Correct.
let's move this item forward. Let's just as a council, I guess our recommendation is gonna be that we move forward these items. I think these are important items. And let's take several bites at the apple. Let's try to get it in the governor's budget through corrections or have it pushed up through the institutions and USHE. And if that fails, then let's look at an RFA that I could carry or the co-chair. That's something I'd be willing to do on this for sure. I think this is important. I don't think there's nothing unreasonable about this ask. So I think we go down that road. So are we comfortable with that? Sound good? Let's take it. Do we want a motion, Jared? Let's make a motion.
Yeah, no, I don't know if we're gonna be specific as.
No, let's be vague.
Corrections or the institutions, but just that we support this. Is there anything in here that ought to be combined or? I mean, you talked about the sharing and you gotta have separate things. So in order to run your programs, these are things that your institutions would need.
And Eric, for you, my preference would be you work with USHE and the institutions and just see how you best want to try to get those building blocks into budgets. And we're gonna have several of them that I think are important. So let's just do that.
So I think Chris is our representing or designee for our voting member from our degree granting institution. Would that be an appropriate motion to come from?
Okay.
I make the motion.
Chris has made the motion. Who wants to second this?
I second it.
Okay, we got a second over Brian. Discussion to the motion. If
No, that was from corrections, so I take it that's a pretty nice.
If I could, just to add
motion of support there.
my thoughts on.
Discussion to the motion.
Oh, thank you.
There you go. We're open.
Tell me how to do this. You know, as you mentioned, there's costs to run the programs and then there's costs, you know, like Dr. Bradbury brought up the technology, and it may seem like adding technology or laptops like this is a luxury for these students, but this is part of the rehabilitation for these students. We have students who we've set a laptop in front of them and it's the first time they've ever used a keyboard or a touchpad. And we have to remember 95% of those in our care are going to be out in the community. And if we're releasing them without ever having touched a computer or knowing how to, I mean, this is essential technology for them. And it's still very basic what we're giving them access to. So it's part of their rehabilitation. It's not just to allow them to type a paper or do something like that. It's part of preparing them for getting back into society. So it's an essential part of their rehabilitation and education.
I agree. I don't think there's any other discussion. Okay, let's close discussion. Any summation? All those in favor of making the recommendation, and you'll sort it out. This is a vague recommendation. So all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Aye. Okay, so that's unanimous as well. Thank you. I think that's really, really helpful. And to your point, it'd be a huge disservice to not put an electronic device in front of them, because that's where, wish that wasn't how the world worked, but it is. Okay, I'm ahead of schedule. We're good.
Yeah.
Very good. Let's go to Duchesne County Jail. I got Jail Commander Jason Curry, and then we've got Aaron. Got Aaron here, so the time is yours.
Perfect, thank you. Appreciate that, Mr. Chair. Appreciate the opportunity to just come share a proposal with the council as well. We're really pleased today to have Commander Curry here with us and Sheriff Tucker. Let's turn some time to them to talk about what they see. They're at the Duchesne County Jail and the value that takes place with these inmates and the students, the good work that's taking place there. And Jared has a few slides he'll be pulling up for us. We'll share with you, but when I say a few, we have three. I think some of them are good for us to see because it celebrates the accomplishment that's taking place there with the student. And the other one is a summation of the financial proposals that you saw in your packet that went out as part of it.
All right, so there's a folder on here that says PowerPoint. Is that the one, the presentation package?
Should be that. Should be the only thing on that jump drive, I hope.
Yeah, on the jump drive, there's one that says presentation package. It's a PowerPoint, right?
Yes.
This is Henry Mountain hunting photos.
Yeah. Go to the biggest one first.
Yeah, how come that's not open? Let's try it again.
Here, hit the. Let's see what that,
Next,
just not loading.
maybe I got the wrong file.
I was just walking over Lowry. It's really good seeing you.
It's really good to see you, Senator.
Professional, but maybe.
Tell you how nice it is to see old friends. I
Still the same way.
was staying up at Little American, got to run into some of the interim members up there and
We kind of miss you in the legislature.
miss you guys, most of you.
Eric, we have Lowry in the audience now as well, and this is kind of the old gang.
You know what's funny, Lowry, is I actually recognized you from the back of your head. Cause you sat right in front of me for so long. I'm like, I know who that is.
Other than my wife, you're the only one I know has said that, so.
Wow.
It is wonderful to see you and a thrill to be in the same virtual room with you again. You're a legend, and especially what you did with juvenile and the impact that's going to have on this discussion with adult corrections, Lowry. You left a legacy, and I'm really, really proud that you're still in the game.
Well, you're very kind and gracious and if you ever had any faults, most of it was related to you exaggerate, but other than that, you're nearly perfect. We love you guys, and I see Stan as well. Did he disappear? He was on the screen for a while, but, oh, there he is.
I can see Stan. I don't know if we dare throw Stan under the bus.
I don't know whether you remember me or not, Stan, but I remember you, so.
I remember you, Lowry.
We're having technical difficulties.
I
Stan,
know that
so-
you're here just to keep an eye on your running partner. That's primarily what your duty is.
That's exactly right. My running buddy needs oversight.
My running buddy needs to go to a different doctor. Time he goes
Okay,
to.
Mr. Chair, do we have just a minute? Maybe I can put a little context around how this can be helpful, talking about jails and other partnerships. Can I have 30 seconds on that?
You can have 30 seconds because we're still figuring out the PowerPoint. So-
Okay. So most of you
Says he has
probably.
it.
Yeah.
Go ahead,
Yeah,
Eric,
most of
sorry.
you probably know, but some may not. Utah is unique in that we don't build a lot of prisons. Like Texas has 151 prisons. That's a lot of prisons, right? But we do partnerships with our jails. And so instead of building larger state facilities and housing everybody just in centralized areas, we partner with these different county jails, and it's a great relationship. And the sheriffs have been great. The counties have been great. One challenge, Mr. Chair, that I would throw out there, and I know that Brian Favre can talk about this in a lot more detail than I could, but we tend to send the best of our inmates out to the county jails. And so we provide quite a bit of programming and vocational training and work opportunities and things like that in both the Salt Lake Prison and the Gunnison Prison. But looking forward, the future, again, not knowing exactly sure how that'll be or whatever, but I just wanted everybody to recognize that a substantial number of our state inmates are out in county jails. And it's difficult sometimes for them. They'll start a program, maybe at Gunnison or maybe at USCF here in Salt Lake. And then because of moving around and going to the different housing options that are available through the county jails, sometimes that programming gets interrupted in a really, really difficult way because they were gaining momentum, and then all of a sudden that opportunity to continue that momentum gets either interrupted or halted completely. And so I just wanted again to put that context around it, that Utah's unique. We don't build lots of prisons. We do lots of partnerships. Those partnerships are great. But they bring with them some inherent challenges, and I just thought that context as we move into this conversation might be helpful.
I think that's helpful, Eric. Thank you. President Waite, we've got you up now. Looks good.
Thank you. Thanks, Chair. Appreciate that. If you'll just advance to the next slide, we'll turn some time over to the sheriff and commander to visit for a few minutes.
You don't look that good on Duchesne. I go out more often. All right, Sheriff.
So if you guys don't know what our residential program is we build low-income housing. So the inmates build it in pieces. We'll actually send them out, set them up on site. During COVID, we didn't have a whole lot of houses to be built, but we did a lot of cabinetry and a lot of things for admin, some of the schools and a few things like that. So it really works well. It's one of those programs that they come in, they've never learned how to read a tape measure. They never learned how to put anything together. They are building things at the end. And they are excited. They want to be there. The community loves it. It just works out well. We'd like to see some more of these programs so that people can get out. I mean, the Uinta Basin, we're booming right now. The oil and gas has got us booming. We're building, and these are great opportunities for the people that live there. Stay out there.
Commander, what do you see inside the jail?
Well, and we see that too, that the inmates that do participate in the vocational programs, as we see, has a lower recidivism rate, but they're also better behaved while they're in there. We talked about, somebody said something about a skin in the game, right? This is their program. This is their education. And to be able to go out there and be part of that program, we definitely see a much better behavior from our inmates, which reduces incidents inside of the jail, incidents with staff, all of those other things. Like the sheriff said, and Brian said, 95% of these people will be going back into our community. We're able to place these guys in a job that they're likely to get once they get out. You know, most of the people that we serve, they're not going to get a business major and go into business when they get out. But these are jobs that pay them well. If we put them out into the community and they go into a low skill job, fast food, 7-Eleven, clerks, they don't make enough money in those programs they're in those jobs to support themselves. So we know what happens. They know how to make enough money to support themselves. Unfortunately, it's just through criminal activity. But if we can give them a program that's going to pay them a livable wage when they get out, the chances that they're going to stay out increases a lot higher. And we're seeing that in our own communities. So.
It's a great segue. I mean, you can see the numbers there. You can see that UB Tech has been involved with the Department of Corrections for a long time. We say 25 years on that slide because that's as far back as we can date it. We think it perhaps goes deeper than 30, but we don't have the documentation to prove it. I guess on a real personal note, I'll just share. I actually have a real tender spot in my heart for these programs. I'll try not to get emotional, but I have a family member who I attribute this program at the Duchesne County Jail to saving their life. That individual made some poor decisions decades ago, found themselves at the state penitentiary, and then later on working themselves through the process of the programming across the state, landing at the Duchesne County Jail and graduating from the residential construction program. That family member now, for almost 30 years, has stayed out of prison, has been a productive member of society, and is now a very successful general contractor. That's a personal story, you know, one that I see day in and day out. So I have great faith in what happens there inside these facilities, and those dollars are well invested. The ROI is, it's huge, in my opinion. So, you know, I am a huge advocate of this. The Uinta Basin Technical College does have capability to help bolster the system. There is capacity at the Duchesne County Jail for additional programs. Obviously, that's contingent upon funding, and all of you know how that works, and we've had that conversation earlier today. But I think there's some fun highlights there to see, you know, just in those two quotes, but our bottom quote there from our current faculty member, he's aware of 30 of those graduates in the past 7 years that have went into the workforce. Of course, all of them are at different phases of their incarceration, but he shares often, and he's guarded with this information, but he shares that he knows many of them are being successful. So that's a very, you know, wonderful thing for us to hear. Next slide there, Jared. There's some fun pictures to look at. If you ever have an opportunity, please go attend one of these graduation ceremonies at any one of the institutions that provide training for incarcerated students. It is absolutely an amazing event. And it's always fun to pose the question to those inmates there. How many of you have a higher education credential prior to this one? And you will see those numbers will be extremely low. You know, somewhere around 10 or 12% of those will raise their hand. And after they graduate, now they have a higher education credential. We know education's the key. And education is the key to opportunity and success, no matter where you're headed in this life. But it's fun to see just that confidence that comes to that individual. And I've heard many, many of them come up and say, this is the first time I've ever completed anything in my entire life. You know, that sense of accomplishment is huge, and it just perpetuates them into some greater trajectory. So, and as they both shared, we've all had those conversations with them, and I can think of a couple in those pictures up there who have shared specifically with me while we were there. This is the next piece of my puzzle, and I've got to do this next, and then I'm out in a couple of years or 6 months or whatever it is. It really gives them a groundwork for success. And then the last slide is the summary of some costs associated with it. So 2 proposals we have that we would ask for your consideration on. First would be Culinary Arts Program. At the Duchesne County Jail, they have I guess it's ready-made, I would say. The facility's already built. The only thing that needs to happen there is to invest in faculty. They are a full-service jail where they provide these services now, but those inmates that go through as part of their kitchen privileges, I don't know the right terms for it, they come out with 0 credentials right now. Whereas if we would invest in a faculty or 2 in there, they would come out with a culinary arts credential. So to me, that's some real low-hanging fruit. I also know that there are those programs in other areas of the state, and I know that sometimes that has been a conversation. Do we invest in the same program in a different facility? But that is there. We would ask for your consideration on that. Secondly is a heavy equipment operator program. This is a program that also fits very well at the Duchesne County Jail. There's space in rural Utah. And at the facility there on the bench, there is certainly space for a heavy equipment operator program there. We would anticipate this as highly simulated, more so than active engagement on heavy equipment, but may at the end of that program have actual heavy equipment that they're operating on. This is something we have learned about in partnership with CAT and also a correction facility back in, I believe it was West Virginia, and a college who does this, a fully simulated heavy equipment operator program inside their facility. They have shared it's been extremely positive and has excellent outcomes. Of course, this is CAT Salesman sharing with us, saying that those students, when they come off of that simulation, can operate any piece of equipment that CAT builds without real life operation. But we think there's some value in maybe exploring that both ways. With that, you can see the costs associated with that. One thing to keep in mind here, we have already pushed forward a application with Representative Curtis's office at the federal level for some community funding. That is currently sitting in a committee and pending recommendation by the end of this month. So that is for that $1.4 million in simulation. Our desire is to get our heavy duty equipment operator program up and going on campus and in the correctional facility. We just think it's an excellent avenue there. Also, with the skills that the inmates have at the Duchesne County Jail now, they also have the capability of building that classroom that is needed for that space. Any questions? That's the end of our.
So do you see this as kind of a match on the heavy equipment program? You've got Congressman Curtis out there. I mean, if you're looking at polls, he's going to be a United States Senator, so he gets to continue to work on and get that funded. But if we make a recommendation, we're making just general recommendations today. I mean, is our recommendation contingent on him getting some of that funding?
I would say so, that recommendation ought to be contingent upon that funding coming forward, or the ticket, to get that simulation equipment is quite lofty, as you can see. It's one time in initial expense, but we have reason to believe right now that that will be funded.
It's cool. And then the culinary arts, I know when I'm at Utah County Jail, I do their kernel programs, and it's always the inmates cooking, and they do a great job. And I think that's normal in all the jails. Is there another model where they're getting a credential with an instructor, or I don't know how they do it in Utah County. They do a good job, but I'm assuming they don't have a professor or an instructor of some sort where they're getting a credential. Is there a model, or would you be kind of the pilot program? I mean, it makes sense to do it, but do you know if the other jails have figured that out?
I'm gonna defer to Brian, but I think there's a model.
Snow College is currently running a program like that at Gunnison.
Okay.
I could defer to Jay Olson after this, but
Jay, tell us about it, and then
they're in the
Eric's-
process of bringing credit to it.
Tell us about that, Jay, and then Eric's hands up. I'm curious because I love this model. I mean, it makes sense to get them a credential of some sort if you're doing it anyways, why not go out of our way to give them a credential? Jay, jump in.
That's right. If they're doing it, they just will be getting credit for it. So I'm just looking here at the report from Davis Technical College. They have a program there for women at the Salt Lake prison. But let me step back to Gunnison, since that's a specific area you're asking about. Many years ago, we partnered with them to put in a culinary arts instructional program. Never was a certificate because we did not have that on our campus. But we've been funding that with 2 part-time instructors. Very popular program. Those students are waiting on deck to be admitted into that program, and we put about 20 to 22 students in there for each of the 3 semesters to complete the equivalent of 21 credits. So we are currently now with the alignment program on the technical education side of USHE and the IOC committee. We are converting our courses over to the aligned culinary arts program that is available at many of the technical colleges across the state. So we're looking at 21 credits for the program of the core, and then an additional probably 6 to 7 credits we'll create on our own that has come out of what the interest is from conversations with the students participating with our 2 part-time instructors there. So we're just getting started on the technical education credentialing side of it, but I have no reason to doubt that we will not be able to put that in place by early fall, so that students enrolling in the fall semester instruction will be receiving academic credit towards a technical education certificate in culinary arts that will be equivalent to what the aligned culinary arts program is at the other technical colleges that have a culinary arts program.
Okay, perfect. Thank you, Jay. We'll come to you, Eric. Brian wanted to weigh in, and then we'll come to you, Eric.
Just to add to what Jay and President Wade were saying, the uniqueness of the Uinta Basin's proposal would be that, like President Wade said, this is low-hanging fruit. This is students who are already working in the kitchen, which really could be replicated across the state, like you said, Mr. Chair. There's students doing this all over. There's not an instructor assigned to the students, and there's no credit being given, but that's an easy hole to fill and easy opportunity to provide this. So that model would be a first of its kind in the state, which is a wonderful opportunity for the students. And I can just speak in terms of the partnership with Uinta Basin and Corrections, it's been fabulous. Unfortunately, I have I just went to visit the program a while back. It took me a year to get there. I didn't realize how pretty the drive was, but to see them building the house and to see the pride that they have in just accomplishing something, it transforms them. 100% Corrections would support this program expansion for the culinary arts program and the heavy machine operation. It would be a wonderful opportunity.
Okay, Eric.
Thank you. And a couple quick comments. First, a big shout out to Jay and to Snow College. The work that they're doing on figuring out how to take certificates and move them up into associate's degrees and things like that is just revolutionary. And I think is going to change the game for a lot of us. So a big hats off to just being incredibly innovative in that space. But I wanted to comment about the culinary arts and just make sure that people understood that we're not talking about a food handler's permit. Man, they can cook. The entire executive team for corrections went out to the USCF, and we had lunch out there provided by the culinary arts program. And I will share that it was as good as any restaurant that I have been into in Salt Lake City in a long time. It is not fast food. It is culinary arts, and they are very talented. And then my last question was around the heavy equipment, as maybe another potential funding stream. If that were in any way related to agriculture, we might also be able to pull in some USDA funding and maybe have another avenue to look at supporting what Representative Curtis might be doing on that. So I was just curious if, I'm assuming that heavy equipment is probably more around things like excavators and stuff like that, but just curious if it also applied to ag.
That's correct, Eric, and we haven't thought of the ag. I think that'd be a great avenue for us to explore, you know, and if you're aware of an avenue we can explore there to couple with that, we'd be happy to. That would certainly be appropriate and certainly be advantageous for not only our region of the state, but I also would speak for my good friend Jay. It'd be advantageous in their region of the state.
Well, it sounds like we all need to go down there and try this restaurant. I'm leery to ask Eric for restaurant recommendations in Salt Lake, because there's some really good places down here, but Jay, jump in.
Thank you, Chair. Just a couple of comments. One thing about our program in culinary arts at Gunnison Prison, we are just really utilizing time in their culinary kitchen between their meal preparation times. So that's why we've not been able to expand it. I have a vision sometime in the future to make that not just 2 part-time instructors, but a full-time and a part-time, and running a morning and afternoon session. Currently, we only have use of the kitchen facility in the afternoon between their lunch, their dinner hour preparation. So there's still some challenges with it, but we can make it work. And down the road, I'm planning to come forward with a proposal here in a year or two to say, let's expand that, because I think there's the opportunity to do that. And then on the construction side of the heavy equipment, we also have simulators here of a different company, not by Caterpillar. And they do have farm equipment simulation that can be the software that goes in with that construction equipment for the heavy equipment simulation. So that is an opportunity in rural areas to look at some agricultural kinds of training opportunities on equipment for these students.
Thank you, Jared. No, ladies first, Stephanie. We're going Stephanie. I'm coming back to you.
No, just a couple of questions. One is on the heavy equipment, I presume that this is on simulators, right? So we're not worried about bringing the equipment and the safety issues are fine, right? The other question was, what's the population at the Duchesne County facility? You got state?
So we currently contract with the state for 100 contract inmates. With our county and everything, we run about 166.
Okay, I'm just curious what the capacity is for student demand on, this would be 3 programs if you have these 2, so.
I look at your culinary arts, obviously you're asking for 2 FTEs. That looks like it'd be like a scalable. If you only got 1, you'd still get it started. All right, Stephanie.
I'm just like thinking about the heavy equipment operator and program and things that I've heard about in other states, right? Like talking to people about corrections and programs that are offered, or even rural communities here for vocational tech. Sometimes those things are put on trailers, right? So that they could go from county jail to county jail and be expandable. I mean, especially when you're talking about like capacity, 160 students, but you could, if you put it on a trailer, you could potentially reach many more students, right? Because it could go from you to Garfield to Beaver to, anyway, just a thought, and maybe not for this particular one, but as we're thinking about how to increase opportunities for post-secondary, like putting it on a trailer could make it much more broader in reach, right? It's greater impact.
Jay, your hand is still up. Did you have something else you wanted to add? Eric's hand's up. Let's go to Eric then.
Just a follow-up question on that about being able to partner. Are there any geographical limitations that any of you have to deal with putting a program together that we could potentially move in between jails?
I think that's probably for the sheriff. I think moving big equipment through the basin to other parts of the state would be a little trickier than most. But yeah, what do you guys think?
That's kind of what we found easier than moving the equipment back and forth is we move the inmates back and forth a lot. So if Beaver County has a program and, you know, if they're there over a certain amount of time, everybody that qualifies has already graduated that program. Then we move those inmates and trade them with some that we have. So they're getting more certificates, but we're moving inmates more than we're moving programs.
I was just curious because I know that when I was doing some work a few years ago on concurrent enrollment, not concurrent enrollment, excuse me, the immersion program with languages, that certain higher education institutions could only service certain geographical areas, and they kind of had to stay within the boundaries of their, I don't know if it's a constitutional thing or what that was, but I was just curious about, you know, if we found something that made sense to move some people around or have it in multiple places, if that were a limitation or not.
And Eric, I think you ought to explore what they said. I mean, bouncing students around to programs that fit is, I mean, you're bouncing inmates around already. And that'd be way less expensive than moving equipment. Your liability goes down because you're already doing it anyways. So I think we ought to spend some time thinking about that. That's kind of an interesting concept.
Yeah.
Yep, jump in, Jeremy.
Higher ed does have service region assignments.
Yeah.
And so there are some rules they need to follow if you're moving a program out of your region to another one. But it's being done and it's done very well. We have examples, I think Snow College, aren't you doing some program with Southwest on commercial driving, not at the jail, or the prison, but in your regular programming? So things like that, there are pockets around there where programs are shared or an institution will work together.
Well, and I think as a policy, the legislature wants more shared services, more partnerships. And I think the more we see that, the happier the folks on the Hill are. There's no question. That's cool. Yeah, jump in, Stephanie.
One last thought too.
And then we're gonna take a motion to support this too. So be thinking about who wants to second this motion.
I'm coming from adult education, right? So we have people in Duchesne County Jail. So as you get these in, like, can we partner? And some of our adult education students could also maybe be co-enrolled in some of these other things to help, you know, like get some vocational CTE credit, right? So that they can graduate from high school, going on and have a, right, like that just dual enrollment opportunity that doesn't happen for adult ed very often. That'd be fantastic.
What would that integration look like? That's interesting. Probably helpful.
Similar to what's happening in high schools, right?
I'll tell you right now, so Stephanie has partnered, Stephanie has helped facilitate the partnership between our high school at our Salt Lake County prison and Davis Technical College to make it's a concurrent enrollment program.
Yeah.
So students are enrolled in high school, adult ed, and they're enrolled in Davis Technical College at the same time, receiving concurrent enrollment credit. So, and it's the first time we've ever done that, and a similar thing could be done.
I don't think that would be much of an issue in Duchesne
It's-
County.
it's-
I don't think so either.
A lot of them
And-
are already in our high school program and working in our kitchen. And so it wouldn't.
Just giving him credit, right, like allowing him to
I bet
actually.
feeling integrated too. I bet it's just way more
I don't think
successful.
someone telling them, hey, you're a college student makes a huge difference.
Yeah, especially for this population, right? The students that we serve, like, it's huge for them.
Okay, cool.
There it goes.
Okay. Let's take a motion to support this. And then Eric, again, this is something that I think the motion is gonna be to support it. We hope to see it come through the governor's budget. I know on the recommendation it says coming through Department of Corrections and just work that out. I guess you should work that out as well. If it makes more sense to have the program come through the tech college in the end, let's do that. But similar to the one before, if we can't get these in the governor's budget, I'm not afraid to do RFAs for this because this stuff is important. So that's Jared's motion.
Yeah, that's my motion.
Stephanie's gonna second it.
She's not-
I'm a non-voting member, otherwise I totally would.
Ryan, I'm.
I'll second it. Chris
Sorry.
Chris
I got a
wants to
second over here.
participate.
Okay, we got a second over here. Any discussion to this?
I can just say, I've seen those, I went to an education and corrections conference where they had those simulators.
Yeah.
And more prisons are using them now, and they're awesome. They're really cool.
And this feels obvious to me. I mean, this is low hanging fruit. We should be doing this already. So, all right, back to the Jared, you're the maker of the motion.
Just part of the sum, like, what I would be doing is based on recommendations today, including this one. We'll send, a message over to corrections, executive director and all of you with, these recommendations.
All right. Let's do it. Okay, let's take that as a vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? I'll rule that passes unanimously. Hey, thank you for driving out. The pictures of the drive, I hope there's not a beautiful picture of driving to Spanish Fork. There's already too many people there, so we all go down there. It sounds like we're gonna go have dinner down there. That's Eric's recommendation. Oh, I'm not gonna let you defend yourself. Let's keep moving forward. Let's go to Jared with the budget recommendations. We all know now that Eric, instead of going to Ruth Chris, wants to go to the jail.
That makes sense.
Okay, Jared, you're up.
Okay, all right, so item 6, the budget recommendations, this is essential, a wrap up on the conversation we've already been having. We've already done some recommendations on the technology, on the Duchesne County programs there. I'm aware that Snow College had some budget requests in there that we included in your packet. And we may want to have Jay talk a little bit about those. I'm also aware that Salt Lake Community College, I believe, had some requests that they wanted to find a way to take some funding forward to help support the program. So Jay first.
Yeah, jump on, Jay.
Okay, thank you. Appreciate the opportunity. So I already mentioned the culinary arts. At some point, we would like to very quickly move that to a full-time position with about $70,000 more would do that to make a full-time position and still maintain funding for the part-time assistant that's there to help with the teaching and training. And then some ongoing budget for a part-time instructor in our construction management program, which we've had at the prison for a number of years. And the students there, full course of 18 to 20 students doing construction management building this last year. That they just completed a tiny home for the Other Side Village project in Salt Lake. When I was down there a week ago, they had finished the tiny home, just waiting to ship it out. They were building a large post and beam pavilion to be auctioned off at a community fundraising event. So those are the funding that we would like to have just to put in place and have available that additional 70,000 for the culinary arts, 32,000 for the full-time, or excuse me, a part-time position to help with the construction management. And then we were looking in 2026, set a goal here at the college to actually have a full-time prison coordinator employed by the college, stationed at the Central Utah Correctional Facility to be helping with registration, paperwork, even advising. And we envision this opportunity because of our Tech Connect model that was already addressed by Director Hutchings, the opportunity to convert technical education credits into academic elective credits towards Associate of Science degree. And we're committed with our new provost and President McKiff to have available the general education towards Associate of Science in the prison by fall of 26, which means that an inmate that completes either construction management or culinary arts would have basically their almost 30 hours of elective credit towards Associate of Science and could finish up that Associate of Science and General Education opportunities offered there. So those are our requests, that 70,032 may be prioritized, and then a year from now, 65,000 plus 50 for a prison coordinator.
Okay, are there questions? Anybody questions for Jay? I think we've had a good discussion. No, thank you. And I think that is certainly in order. Tim, you're online. You want to talk about some of these requests from Salt Lake Community College?
Chris, are you there? Sorry, you may have Chris speak to them. I think he probably put them forward. I don't know that I've seen them yet. Chris, do you want to speak to them?
There was a comment in our report that was, we need more administrative staff to run a prison program of this size. 300 students is a lot, and there are 3 people running the administration of all of this. And a lot of it is still manual, and a lot of it is collecting information for another department and then making sure that that is done correctly. And there have also been concerns talked internally regarding just the stability of the program long-term. You want people, because it is such a specialized type of administrative position, you want people to be able to stay in those positions long-term, to be able to provide stability for the program, for the students. And I think there's even been research done on that. And the type of pay structure is very, very low for these type of positions at the college level. And it would be nice if that pay structure could be redesigned to reflect what actual cost of living in this state is at this time. An ABC4 News report recently reported that you need to make $133,000 just to qualify for a home loan right now. And I don't think I know of many people making that in prison education. Another thing that has come up often has been just the cost of the program. The inflation is real. Cost of books has increased dramatically. Cost of technology has increased dramatically. And even tuition has increased since when the last time the SLCC had its legislative appropriation decided upon. So, Tim, you want to add anything to that?
No, I'll just say it's, we're mindful at the college about how much Chris and David and the team have put forth their effort. It's been Herculean. It's really an understatement how much they've done to get to the point we're at. I would really love to say we could just, we have the money to throw another position at it. We have had lots of conversations internally, not as a woe is us, but last year, just as an example, when all was said and done in our legislative funding, we were able to, I think, fund 3 or 4 new positions across the entire college. And unfortunately, a position, just didn't make it to the top for the prison. So I would just say, we need it. We just don't have a lot of free resources right now. And so, what we would ask for this year and how we'll prioritize it, we haven't decided. I'll just say we do need more help out there. Everybody at the college knows it. It's just a function of we have a lot of needs and then frankly, not a whole lot of funding to go with it. So what we'd put forward, what we'll ask for, whether it's an RFA or in our performance funding ask, I don't know yet. But it's safe to say we have needs to keep this program growing for sure. So
I think that's helpful, Tim. Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. And at some point, obviously I chaired higher ed when I was in the House, but we probably ought to get on the agenda again. Maybe you're on the agenda later in the fall. I think it's remarkable the work that's going forward here, and it'd be good to come and remind the committee that I serve on. Chris, let's give you Davis Tech and the U of U, these two programs. What are these two funding requests?
Those are their update reports. They didn't have a funding request on theirs, but you can see that we have on the institution reports just an update on how many students they've got and their enrollments. So I have an opportunity on that, but we have to make a motion on the budget part of it.
Okay, let's make a motion.
That motion would be that we forward the recommendations that we've already voted on, but also recommend that Snow College's request go forward to corrections, and that Salt Lake Community College would go through their institutional budget request on that.
Okay, Brian, you second.
Second.
Thank you. Discussion of the motion. Seeing none, back to making the motion. Waves. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, so that's unanimous. Let's jump to the other items, higher ed, education in county jails. And this is gonna be Brian and Dr. Sam Arungwa. And I apologize, Sam, I owe you a call.
Thank you, Senator.
So I don't know who's going first, but the time is.
I will go first if that's okay. And I feel like the entire discussion today has been a perfect segue and set a foundation for this, because one of the things, one of the common themes has been, a need for resources, and obviously that the demand is greater than than what we can provide. So, one of the things that corrections is tasked with is providing educational opportunities for those under its stewardship and care, which includes our prisons, our 2 state prisons, and our 20 county jail partners. As has come up, it's a little more difficult for us to provide those programs in our county jail partners because, well, most of our staff is in Salt Lake and Gunnison and not out in the county jails. And Dr. Sam has been, I refer to him as the secret weapon in the partnership that we have found to help provide these services to our county jail partners. Dr. Sam and I had the pleasure of meeting about a year ago, last April, at the Sheriff's Conference, but kind of just crossed paths. And what we found out is that through a partnership with Corrections and Dr. Sam, UDC is able to reach a lot larger part of its population, especially with its county jail partners, and provide college education. And with him today is Lynn Kwame from Southern Utah University, who are here, who we were starting a partnership with as well. So I'm kind of the open the curtain guy and introduce Dr. Sam, but let him know that, let you all know that we're very excited about our ability to partner with him and the opportunity that he helps us provide to our county jail students. Dr. Sam?
The secret weapon. Thank you, Brian. That's the best I've heard. So
I get better at it every time.
yes, absolutely. Well, everyone, I'm Dr. Sam Arungwa. You have to roll the R on the Arungwa, but Sam is good if you don't want to go through that.
You had an accent from Idaho. What part? Boise?
Senator. It's a long way.
My best Idaho R.
Idaho, it's close to Idaho, Nigeria.
Neighbors,
Eastern part, Abia State.
basically neighbors. Yeah.
Close. You forgot to introduce the legend, Representative Larry Snow.
Former.
Former. I was gonna say, is it former or retired? So I'm your secret weapon. He is my secret weapon. He recruited me secretly when he was co-chairing I call it Higher Education for Incarcerated Youth. And his team reached out to me, best thing that ever happened to me in my career. Because I came here not knowing that I would be the only person, I hope there's someone else, they should seek me out, the only person with a PhD in juvenile justice. And he's been working on juvenile justice for a while. And my PhD dissertation was on how to help, I was thinking of my village in Africa, how to help counties, or we say local governments, areas back in Africa, but here we say counties. I was disturbed that we have a solution to cutting juvenile crime in half, which now the science have shown that the same thing happens with adults, which is super exciting. But as at that time, I was studying juvenile justice and focusing on how do we cut recidivism. And we found out that the secret to that is higher education, and virtually no area was implementing that in corrections. So I decided to focus on that. And what I came up with, it wasn't so scientific. I served a mission for the Church of Jesus Christ, and I realized that I paid to serve a mission. And so as we were talking about how to convince elected officials to pay professors to teach, I raised my hand and I said, what if a professor wants to teach for free? What lawyers call pro bono law. In law, I thought, what if we applied that to education? And I was ostracized for suggesting that professors can work for free. That was like bad thing. But the thought kept nagging at me. So I decided to do what doctoral students do. I put it to scientific test. And it shocked me at first because I developed a survey, we call it willingness to support, and asked professors if they would teach one class a year for free as a way, if it would cut crime in half. And half of them said absolutely. And I said, if I wasn't the one asking, if it was the president of the United States or the prophet of your church or the governor, somebody who has authority, and the number even shoot up further. People that hated the governor of Texas would teach for free. Democrats, liberal, it didn't matter. They would do it because there's a mission behind it. And that was the hunch I had. Because the reason I went on mission and paid to go was because I believed in the cause. And so I thought, how many other professors believe that if they can cut crime, that they would do something about it? So that was the beginning of a long journey, scientific discovery to find what we're calling it surplus resources today. I didn't know what to call it then. I am here to clarify that in every county in Utah, we have more than enough resources to fully support full implementation of higher education in every correctional facility. In other words, today we have about 95% gap. The legislature is only funding about 5% coverage. It's only a few hundred people we are serving. The population is 30,000. If you add up all the people locked up in prisons in Utah, it's about 15,000. And the people who were formerly incarcerated, what we call parole and probation, is another 15,000, give or take. So we can close that gap and we can do it quickly. And that was what brought me and my wife to Utah. I am asking for us to consider, for you to consider as a council, Mr. Chair, if you would give us the opportunity to do that. The resources are there, but they're hiding in plain sight. When we say resources, it means three categories of assets. The first one is land, which is dirt, soil. I've heard about agriculture today. I was so excited. We have more than enough surplus land to support the agricultural needs in higher education in corrections. The second of the three is what we call labor, which is a fancy word for human beings. We have untapped resource in labor. We have thousands of people, workers in labor. We measure them in categories. You have entry level, you have what we call professionals, you have professors, administrators. We have more than enough surplus labor that we can measure and mobilize to close this gap. The last phase is what we call capital.
Capital is any assets we need in higher education that is not land or labor. We classify it as capital. Sometimes we refer to that category as catch-all. The most famous capital is US dollar. And that's what traditionally we chase in higher education in prison. The trouble with that is that legislatures, and I have to be super careful, Mr. Chair, legislatures, and they don't all have degree in criminal justice or juvenile justice. So when you ask them for more money to educate offenders, it sounds like you're trying to encourage bad behavior. What I've gotten many times is something like Sam or Dr. Sam. So you want me to give you money to educate offenders when my child is borrowing out of the eyeballs just to pay for tuition. So it doesn't always make sense. But what we have found out is that if you do a pilot and show the outcome in that senator's or representative district, you can then get them to support it because they can see beyond the optics that looks really bad, which is give unlimited higher education for free to somebody who has broken the law. Initially, there is a shock. The way you break that shock is to find a way to do a pilot and then show the outcome. All of a sudden, you can get the most hardline representative to vote because you've created proof of concept, you've delivered on returns on investment, and they can then reinvest that profit. I hope that makes sense. The scientific name is social impact bond. Sometimes we call it pay for success on the street. So our proposal, what we've been working secretly, I prefer to work in secret, but now I am worried because I have 6 months to deliver in Utah. I would like to do this on a national level. So what we have come up with is that we want to, with your support, to identify these resources. We have a pretty good idea what they are. To identify them, we call it measuring. So we agree with the elected officials in charge of these resources that they are indeed surplus. What I called it in my dissertation is waste, but I found that that is rude. So we changed it to surplus. And that's selling better. So we know that this land exists, it's sitting there, is owned by taxpayers, and is not being fully utilized or in some cases unutilized at all. If we can tap into it, we can deliver a pilot that will save millions of dollars, and the legislature and hopefully the governor can then reinvest that amount to pay for this in perpetuity. That is a simple idea if we have what we call willingness to support. If there's a need, if there's a desire, willingness to make this change. It's a slight change in policy. It does not require passing a new legislation. It can be done by executive order, although legislation will be extremely helpful so that we measure and monetize waste resources that already exist and use it to fund 100%. That is when we do what we call move the needle. If we keep funding at this current level, recidivism rate will remain the same. If we offer massive access to higher education using these surplus resources, Utah will go from being at the bottom to rise to the top, the same place where we have places like Norway or Finland. This is what they're doing. They do two things. They guarantee higher education, we call it HE or HE, and they guarantee high income work. We call it high work. HE for high work is a simple equation, and we have to do it in mass in order to get a shift in resident rate. What we have found is that the reoffending rate will be cut in half. So the question is, what about those who still go on to reoffend after they have already received higher education? We got the answer about 5 years ago, and it's even more exciting. If you break the law, I am a professor, I am a doctor. If I break the law and I get arrested and put in prison, you can simply turn that prison into a college and I would teach for free. So the state will be earning more than 100,000 from my prison labor. So either way, the investment pays out. It actually pays more if those people commit crime again after they receive higher education. And we can turn all our prisons into the most productive place in our communities. Today is the opposite. You have people sitting around watching TV and mostly doing what we call low income work, LIWO. We need to transition them to high income work. And we have created enough work for everyone, each of those 30,000 individuals, 15 inside and 15 outside. This program has employment baked into it. So they are helping to facilitate this higher education we talk about. And in fact, they're part of the surplus resources. How am I doing, Brian? So I think we only have 10 minutes. I don't want to go over, Mr. Chair, but that's the exciting news. I drove 6 hours. You'll be proud of me, from Blanding to come and deliver it personally, from Blanding, Utah.
Is that like south of Boise?
Jared knows where that is. He just visited, but we call it middle of nowhere, but it's perfect for me because it's
Middle of
resembles my
somewhere.
village.
Is it close to Lowry?
It's,
Close to Representative Phil Lyman. I don't know whether you've heard of him.
oh,
or not.
don't say that. I don't want to get political,
Anyway, let me tell you.
but he's my neighbor.
Let me tell you about his commitment about driving 6 hours.
Yeah.
He and his wife had two vehicles. One runs really good, the other one not so good. So his wife needed the one that ran really well. But Dr. Sam wanted to be here. So we talked yesterday and he said, I tried to, there is a Greyhound bus, this is a true story. Leave some Blanding that would get me there, but he said, I called yesterday and all the seats are taken. That's how committed he was to get here. I don't know that I would drive get on a Greyhound bus very far, but not from Blanding, Utah. So he's a remarkable man. Thanks for giving him time, Mr. Chair.
Well, thank you, Dr. Sam, and we appreciate your passion. I think we all have a unique and a cool opportunity to do some really cool things with this council, right? We appreciate your feedback. Brian, anything you want to add? You're gonna have the next agenda item.
Oh, Daisy.
Yeah, I wanted to add just what you said about professors volunteering and the results from your survey. So in UPEP, we have about 7 solid professors from both the University of Utah and BYU who have committed to teach a class once per semester or once per academic year. And we're specifically so grateful for our BYU professors. Two of them have been in our program and have been teaching consistently in our program for 4 years. And they still come out from Provo to the Utah State Correctional Facility where this new one is west of the airport. And I think it's very true that when there is a mission behind it, I think that propels professors, right? And the same thing with our U of U professors who keep coming and just believe in the mission, right? Without getting compensated for it. At the same time, as we're working with the College of Humanities at the University of Utah to launch this bachelor's degree program, you know, there's some professors that are asking if they will be compensated for moving around their syllabus, right? And because they will be teaching inside the prison. So I think there's a big range, but I think if you find these professors that do see a mission and believe in it, I think there's a lot of promise in that because we've seen that. And yeah, we can speak to that as well.
Okay. Mike, I appreciate it.
Can I make a comment?
Yeah.
This actually relates to that. When I ran the legislation that created this council, first of all, I can't tell you how really great it is to be in this meeting and see the work you're all doing, because I think it was what I had hoped to see, and there was such a need. We had support for that legislation from University of Utah, Aaron Castro, who had been running the program there, and also from BYU, Professor Hodson.
Yes.
He came and testified about the work that he and other faculty members had been doing volunteering. And so in one of his presentations, he said, and this is important for those that are making policy, he said the statistics are for every $1 the state or the government invests in educating those folks who are in correctional institutions, the savings is $5 on the other end. And that's an important a data point to remember, especially when, as my friend Sam says, people wondering why we're spending this money, making this investment. If it's only about money, a very good case can be made why this is an important investment, because it really does save us money in terms of recidivism and other social issues for those who get out and they don't have a house to live in or a place to live, and they don't have a job and they don't have any training. In some cases, it's almost certain that they're going to be back in the system. So I just want to say something about Sam. He has envisioned a plan that will really help in a very major way. He talks about moving the needle, these issues in the state. And I worked on helping get funding to deliver concurrent enrollment or a form of higher ed to our youth in custody long-term. And the results have been amazing, because I don't remember whether it was you, Sheriff, or who said, it not only educates them, but it relates to how they perform and act while they're in custody. And there's a direct relationship there too. So, but Sam's idea of utilizing resources in ways that we hadn't really looked at before, I believe that it's accurate. And I just want to tell you, Brian, I'm grateful that Corrections has stepped up and embraced and is helping, move that forward. And the last thing I'd say to this group as it relates to money, Congress just recently reauthorized Pell Grants for inmates. And so we think of Pell Grants as regular traditional students, but now that funding can be made available for those inmates as well who take advantage of higher ed while they're incarcerated. So there's a whole lot of resources that can be pulled together that can make this happen. And I would also underline the value of volunteerism. And there really are a lot of people who are teaching, faculty members, who would love the chance to give back and teach in the classroom. And it's interesting because it not only changes the students, but when I had someone testify in support of the juvenile program for teaching, one of them was a teacher and she got emotional. And she was teaching a young 16 or 17-year-old English. And after one of the classes, he communicated with her and said, "Are you telling me that I actually am getting college credit?" She said, "You really are." He came from a family that no one in his family, not his parents, grandparents, extended family, had ever been to college. So I know that's anecdotal, but you've seen people's lives change. And I've used the term education is the antidote for recidivism to a large extent. I really believe that. Thanks, Mr. Chair, for letting me make a comment.
Yeah. Okay, anything else to add from the, Ryan, we're gonna come to you. Let's go to item number 8.
I
Educational career readiness report.
think my time has passed.
Did I take your time? I'm
No,
sorry.
I appreciate it. And if I could just add to that, my recommendation would be, and I'm just a member of the council, but the opportunity that Dr. Sam and his program would provide, I feel like fits the mission of this council perfectly. It's higher education and corrections. It expands into jails as well, but as we know, corrections partners with our county jails. My recommendation would be for Dr. Sam to have a recurring opportunity to provide information to this council on those programs. That I'm just submitting that as a suggestion, but the partnership between him and corrections, myself, is going to continue regardless of his place on this. We're excited about that opportunity. So can't say enough about it. All I have to say about the readiness report is recently Eric Hutchins and myself submitted a report to the Education Appropriations Subcommittee, reporting on the current status of education programs and corrections in the state, as well as requests. And really, it's the same information that Jared provided to all of us on the number of graduates and participants for our programs. as well as, without using a specific number, just a request for additional funding to run these programs. Based off of our just kind of napkin math, there's room with county jails and our state prisons to, we see at least double the programs, double enrollment in the programs that we have, which is phenomenal. Chris is humble, but Salt Lake Community College runs one of the largest degree-bearing programs in the nation currently. I mean, when I tell other correction administrators in other states that they have 300 students, their jaw hits the floor. That's a huge college program for a jail. Most people don't realize that though. And so we have great things going on in correction, and also a wonderful opportunity to expand our programs. Just the fact that Lynn is willing to drive up here as well as a representative from SUU just speaks to the volumes of the willingness our partners have right now to participate. So great things are happening and we just need to make sure we take advantage of it.
Right, perfect. Thank you. Jared, I'm gonna give you last item, year-to-date program updates.
So in your packet, in your agenda attachments, we had to invite each of the institutions to just provide an update in each of the meetings as to where they are in enrollments, and hopefully you get a chance to take a look at the great progress they're doing. We've listed some of the, asked them to list up some of the greatest triumphs and challenges of the last few months, and it's fun to go through and read the great things that are happening, but also read some of the things that they would like to have some help with, or at least some listening ears and some sympathy and cry some tears with them.
A lot of tears.
So aside from that, if there are any questions for the institutions, we could have an opportunity to have folks ask.
Let's open up for questions. If you're thinking of questions, Brian, I just want to say one thing that I want to see happen over the next year. I went to the graduation of Salt Lake Community College, and it was kind of a last minute thing. I showed up, and I was really touched. Personally, I was really touched by what I saw. And one of the things I think this council needs to do a better job of is getting a few more public officials to these graduations, a few more legislators. This is easy for me to support and go fight for this in the legislature because I saw it firsthand. And I think more of and I know you've got a lot of my colleagues that are showing up, but I don't know that I fully understood how the impact this was having for some students. I know at the Salt Lake Community College program I was at, there were a lot of students, and it was a really cool thing to see the pride in these inmates. They had done something that they didn't think was possible. So over the next year or two, let's work as a council in getting some more of our elected officials in these programs and see them firsthand. Because I mean, your photos that you showed today, President Wade, I think it's pretty remarkable to see those, to see folks that are in jail, the jail system dressed in robes, and more people need to see that and appreciate it. So let's do a little bit more work on that. I guess we can take public comment. Do we have any public comment? Stan's about our only member of the public, and I don't know if I dare turn on his mic. So is there anybody else who'd like to make public comment? Stan, I'm gonna let you make public comment, but I'm limiting you to 30 seconds.
Hey, I just want you guys to know, I think you're doing the work of angels. I mean, really, this is about human dignity and the ability of people who have everything against them in life getting a chance. I like to come to these things because I just keep looking at opportunities where I might be able to help you. But I just think what is happening here is really important.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else? Representative Snow, anything you want to add? You're a member of the public for this purpose of this. You already commented, but I'm going to give you the final word before we adjourn.
I can tell you that as I've gotten close to this situation, mostly with the young people, but somewhat with the adults, they are the people that are lost in our community. And when you're all doing this kind of work and reaching out, it's not just about reducing recidivism, it's about what you do for them. And have you noticed if you attend those graduations, I got to attend and speak at some of the young people. It wasn't just about the graduates, but their family. Did you notice?
Yep.
Remember, I watched this young man, 16 or 17, give the valedictorian speech or whatever it was. And I was sitting up in front of him. There were two of them that spoke, and their mothers were on the front row, tears streaming down their face. And I'm not exaggerating. And so it changes them and it changes families. And so I'm not just trying to give you a pep talk. I'm telling you what you all know, I think, probably around this table. But it's really valuable work. I just want to thank you.
Okay, thank you. Jared, anything you want to add before I take a motion to adjourn?
No, it's great council, great work going on. And I said no, but I said
Okay,
that.
Brian
I
has
second.
made, Brian
Oh, I make
made
a
a
motion.
motion to adjourn. It's non-debatable and doesn't need a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? I'll rule that passes unanimously. We are adjourned. Next meeting, we've got some dates here on the agenda, September 17th, October 29th. So look for that. But really, I know we're adjourned, but let's look for opportunities to show the world what kind of work is happening.
Next graduation in August.
August 12th, Davis Technical College graduation at our Salt Lake facility. Everyone's
Let's get-
invited.
Let's make sure you follow up with my colleagues up in that area.
If you could share with me how I contact,
Yeah.
I don't have all of their emails.
Do you
Eric knows
have,
how
do
to
you
do
know
that.
Nate Bluen from
Yeah.
District 13? He's coming out with us in a
Good.
couple of weeks.
Need more.
Eric knows some of these people, does he?
Eric,
Where is he
from
on the outs?
Eric from the Department of Corrections is going, he's not on the outs, he's on the ins still.
Yeah.
Eric is going to help invite more legislators to these graduations, because I think they need to see it. I would especially focus on the higher ed appropriation committee and then Eric's committee. Who appropriates? We've got a correction appropriation committee. I sit on higher ed, so I don't see the other committee, but these funding requests could go through either. I would spend time with the higher ed folks, because I think that committee would be really helpful to be, but I think let's find a way to get more.
Good to have our board.
Let's grab some mayors, county commissioners, as much as we can. Let's try to get more folks to these graduations, because I mean, Stan says we're doing the work of angels. I think he's right for once. I think he's right, so let's just do it.
Perfect.
Can I add another suggestion to that?
Yeah.
If you can get them there, try to get some media there too and educate the public about the good work.
And they've covered, they've covered pretty good, some of them, but I think they cover the big ones at the prison. I don't think they're covering the smaller areas. Did your local cover your graduation? I think it's an easy sell, because it's cool. And
There
your
was a
request
great
is-
article on KSL.com about UPEP's program.
I have some
Keep-
contacts from KSL that I can pass along.
Great. We have plenty to share with them.
Yes.
It's just not getting picked up. So yeah, please send it our way.
Okay, we're adjourned.